Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Administrative Committee meeting this lovely Monday, April 12th, 2021, on this almost bright and sunny spring day. Appreciate everyone being here. Zooming in today, subbing in for Councilor Brandy Sullivan will be Maureen Laughlin. She's in the Zoomverse. And to my left is Councilwoman Gina Truzio.
Hello.
And with that, we will get on to the approval of the March 22nd minutes.
It looks good to me, Madam Chair.
Me too.
Wonderful. Then I'm just going to go ahead and say that those are unanimously approved. And now we have One World Cafe, a request for expanded sidewalk cafe configuration. And Gary Riedner will take this up first.
Thank you very much. What we have before you today is a application for a sidewalk cafe from One World Cafe. Sarah Beth Pritchett from the One World is here. It's a little bit different than our typical sidewalk cafes, as council knows. Just in the last council meeting, two council meetings, excuse me, council approved a resolution which allowed flexibility in the city's sidewalk cafe ordinance. So utilizing some of those requirements, I guess the flexibility in that, as well as just some other requirements from the state. This application is coming before you, not because of that. That can be handled by staff, and we have the city clerk has a procedure for doing that. However, this one's a little bit different because you'll recall a couple of years ago, there was a request that was brought to you for a sidewalk cafe application filed by Coulter's Creek. And it resulted in what looks like a permanent deck in front of their establishment, and in fact is not. It meets the requirements of that it can't be bolted to the pavement, and it's got to be able to be removed. This request that One World has before you is similar to that, that it has improvements that aren't typically what you'd see in a sidewalk cafe: fences, chains delineating the sidewalk cafe, that sort of thing. So because it is that different, we wanted to bring that before you, as I'm sure the public will have some questions as to whether this is an encroachment, how does it meet the requirements for the sidewalk cafe. So with that, we've got Lori Hopkins, our city clerk, who's in charge of the sidewalk cafe program. Tyler Palmer, our Deputy City Supervisor for Public Works and Services, interfaced with One World and their architect to make sure that it met those requirements. So that's what's before you today, and I'd invite Sarah Beth to the podium. She can say a few words and then introduce her architect.
Great.
Hello, I'm Sarah, as you know. I'm going to start off by asking for forgiveness. I just got my second COVID shot, and I'm a little foggy.
We're just so happy you have your second shot. You be as foggy as you need to. We're here for you.
Yeah, so we were approached by the U of I Design Build Studio, and we were really excited to kind of see what ideas they had. It was a student project. They asked if we might be interested in something, and we mentioned that the outside of the building needs a bit of a facelift. There was a picture in the Daily News that didn't serve any justice to the outside of the building. So the students had been working, and they came up with these really cool built-in designs, and it would allow us to not only make the outside of the building look better, but offer a lot more seating that will make the outside of One World feel more of like an outside patio restaurant. And the building, Brandy and I do not own the building. And we've been working with the building owner along the way, and the Turk family, who owns the building, was really excited about this project as well, because this is something that they've wanted to do for years, but it's just been financially impossible. And by working with the students in this group, and us kind of teaming up, the three entities, we've come up with this really, really, really neat thing, and I think it's going to be awesome for the community. I love that it's sort of a bridge from downtown businesses to the university, and I think it's just going to be awesome for everybody.
Great, thank you.
I will introduce Scott Lawrence, the architect, and he will go through some of the fine details.
Thank you, Sarah Beth.
Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Lawrence. I run the design build program. I'm an assistant professor in the architecture program at the U of I, and in that capacity, I teach a number of studios, do their materials and methods class, and building assemblies. And but my main core, what I do is run the design build program. Prior to coming here, is there a way that I could? I have a way that I get I had a presentation, but I don't know if I can see it or how I can get to it. Maybe I'm this. Oh. Do I share?
Yes.
Okay, let me share. So let me share a little
Bet.
bit about what we do. Hold on. Exit minimize screen, share screen. And share. All right.
Perfect.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Can you see that, Maureen?
Yes.
All right. So talk a little bit about what we do in the design build program. I'm going to try and move it just a little bit so that we can see everything. So we basically have the students conduct research, conduct community outreach, and then provide immersive education experiences. My background, so we get students out there. They're doing everything from working on the site, living on the site, welding, framing, doing casework, all the sorts of details, all the drawings for the projects, all the presentations. There's actually them presenting to Sarah a couple weeks ago on this project. And they build mock-ups of everything that they're working on so that the people can see what it is that they have. They practice that way. A lot of them have never picked up a hammer before. So this is a chance to do that. And we teach them how to use the tools. They're building trusses. We do these things in our studio space. We could really use another space, but we do it in the studio space. But this all came from my background. I'm from Gilroy, the garlic capital of the world. And I grew up around food and around a culture of place that was tied to food. And from that, I started to do architecture and things that were very much about food and place. Took students out, and we've been doing immersive education for a long time, taking them to wineries, restaurants, working on hospitality projects, getting them in front of clients is what we do. These are some of the community partners that we've worked with over the years. And really getting them to engage directly. These are grad students, they're allowed to drink in the work, and getting them in front of other architects as well. We do community design assistance through the Idaho Architecture Collaborative. This is a patio concept that we were working on up the street here. This is the 9 to 5 offices, which we did the conceptual design for and are now open. We had worked with the owner of the Jackson Street Silo site on some work there and some potential. And I think at some point you must have shown it to the Hummel architects, because we like to incubate projects. So if projects are too big for us to build, it gives us to incubate them, for a chance for the client to incubate them and think about them and explore ideas. Some of the other projects that we've been working on down in Lewiston, trying to come up with new ideas for the Masonic Lodge or Masonic Temple there. And this semester we're working with the Moscow Affordable Housing Trust on the design of a twin home. We'll be submitting drawings in about 2 weeks here on those to the city. There's a preview. Started doing design build originally in Colorado. That's where I was for about 15 years. Did a series of cabins where we designed and constructed 14 cabins, each of them about 200 square feet, so they're really small. And we started the project in January, and people moved in June. This was with 28 students, so I'm busy and stretched quite a bit. So I'm going to go through these real quick, but this is some of the images of the project. But I really wanted to get back into some of the hospitality work that I was doing professionally and be directly connected to the community. So when we came here, when I came here to the University of Idaho, I made it a point to start reaching out to some of these hospitality groups. This is Hat Ranch Winery down in Caldwell, down in Canyon County, where we designed an outdoor patio for them. You get great calls when you're a teacher, and probably the best one that I've received is when students tell me that they get a job. And the second best was the owner of Hat Ranch calling me and saying, we kept his business open during COVID by expanding and making it so they had an outdoor space where they could work. Students lived and worked on site for 46 nights, doing all the construction, everything you see here, hand lifted into place, doing all the furniture. Custom CNC sinks, custom everything. I mean, it's a wooden sink that one of the students said, I think the sink should be wooden. And you say, all right, show me that'll work. But they did. They went and figured it out. So it's fun to watch the students grow. We were working with the Moscow Hotel residences, the Moscow Hotel at the former Last Frontier pizza place, and it's been a number of other things over the years. Nothing really seems to stick. And we were looking at trying to get some more housing downtown. And we looked at designs for them for and 4 apartments in that former space. Unfortunately, we got through all the mock-ups. We did full-scale stage sets of the apartments for the client and did little details, and then COVID happened, and unfortunately they needed to focus elsewhere. So this is what we're doing right now, and I'm going to be quick and get into it. This is so what we decided to do as COVID hit is I gathered up a group of graduate students, and we identified some core areas where we could help the community. And we said helping the schools with the crunch that they'll need with outdoor classroom space, helping local restaurants and cafes, and helping them through this. Obviously, with my background designing restaurants, that's something that I was feeling the pain with a lot of friends and old clients. And then helping our school as well. So, and then helping with housing in town. Those are 4 key areas that we looked at. So this is an outdoor classroom that A.B. McDonald Elementary School. We're hopefully going to start construction on this in the next 2 weeks or so. We're finalizing engineering. And the students go through and they do all these details. And I'm showing you these because I want you to understand a little bit, like, we go into the detail of every single piece, and I'm not going to show you every single piece on every project. And then I'll get to then we have One World Cafe. We approached One World Cafe when we heard that they were expanding and said, how can we help? Because we want downtown to be great. That's our goal. We want our town to be great. And everybody knows the corner, and it could use the work. It could use work. It could use updating. And with all the plans that I'm hearing sort of going around about what's going to happen downtown, and with the beginnings of the Hello Walk and some other stuff that's beginning to happen, it was key that we get this corner up and going. And if we could do that while also helping some local business owners and getting students to come downtown and really spend time in our downtown, all the better. There's some images of the proposal. So it basically is 4 zones of seating, some the loose seating like you have right now on the corner there, some corralled seating that is with removable bar height, but it's ADA bar height. It's all 34 inches so that you can still pull a wheelchair into that bar space. Some fold-out seating, so we'll be able to control the daylight. It gets really hot on that in the afternoons there, and if we can just bring out little fins from the building, we make smaller spaces where people can kind of tuck in the afternoon and enjoy that south face right on 6th Street and really have people out on 6th Street enjoying it. And then also, the design allows us to put away all the chairs at night inside of the storage area. So even when they're not open, there's not any incentive for somebody coming late at night, we'll say, back toward maybe campus to knock anything over, because there's nothing to knock over. So this is the model we built. This is in the sort of pub side space that they have right now. If you ever are over there, you should go take a look. And the students presented all this stuff to them. We're looking at daylighting and initial circulation on the site. The students stood outside across the street and just watched for a day. They kind of took turns and came back another day when the weather wasn't as good and watched, just to try to understand what was going on this this pretty simple, 4-foot wide space. So we identified 4 usage zones, one in the former Deep Willie's former Mock Orange, now part of the One World space. We looked at doing low tables, then we looked at doing what seems like built-ins, loose seating as you get closer to the corner and the sidewalk tightens up. There's not a room for all that, and we want to make sure that we're maintaining the clearances. And we wanted it to be adaptive so that as things change downtown, we can, the space can change with it, and you're not left with something that is not so good for you. So I apologize if I'm taking too long, so, yeah.
You're good.
This is more of the analysis the students were doing. So as a result of all this is the final plan. And we went out and measured to the 1/8 of an inch on every single possible location where there could be an encroachment on the right-of-way. We adjusted and worked out details. We mocked up the details full scale to make sure that we could build them and have them function at the sizes that are available. And I think your tightest clearance is 4'1" along Main Street, but we actually we decided to make the clearances to the edges of the street wells or of the tree wells rather than going right up to the tree. We know there may be changes over time and how those trees are enclosed, and we wanted to make sure that we were clear regardless of what the city does there. And then finally, this was actually quite a challenge for the students to design something in the timeline that they have is one thing. To detail it out so that they could build it is another. To source all the materials and do all the budgeting from sheet steel to the screws is another. But then to know that it had to be able to be taken apart by 2 people very quickly. That was a set parameter that we set for the design. So here's the south side adaptable seating. You can see how that center, what is currently kind of a blank wall with we'll call it a dusty and wind-rattled bulletin board, is replaced with a cedar siding. We worked with Doug and Melanie from Wasson Carey to take cedar trunks that would otherwise be chipped up and save them. We milled them down and are using them as the cedar siding. We got beautiful wood out of it. But the students did all that work. In fact, right now, they're currently, as we speak, I would say, hopefully, pushing it with hope in their hearts, cutting them all down to width. So you can see some of the stuff that we've been doing to take apart the assembly. And then if you see the handout that a couple of you got, I'm going to switch over to that real quick on this. We put together a user's manual for them to give their staff and to train their staff on how it would be disassembled. So I think to talk about how the Sidewalk Cafe works, that's probably best to go through it in here. So showing how the tables and short walls, we have these little side walls, and how they disassemble. These are also all detailed out in the construction drawings that we submitted, and I think that's been filed with the city clerk. So all of the pieces of the cafe, there's several 12-foot long bars that seem like, or bar height seating that seem like they're difficult to take apart, but they actually come apart to be 6-foot long pieces that 2 people could walk away with. Very easy, and it's 2 bolts that connect them together. And by connecting them to side panels, then you're able to get that stability that you otherwise might not get without anchoring into the ground. The swing doors are set on 2 hinges that can be lifted out, and they're designed to be light enough that 2 people could walk away with them. They look like they're struggling in that one photo. That's because my students think that they're funny, and they posed themselves to be the people carrying the panels away. So you open the doors, you lift out the panels. Obviously, you can't just open the doors at night, right? You can't steal the door. And it's not obvious that you could open the door, but if you know how, they just lift right off. The next step would be to remove the bench. After you remove, the bench is on a series of Z-clips. Z-clips are little metal clips that kind of, I don't know, They have a little zig in them. They look like a lightning bolt vertically. And then there's another one that goes in the other direction. So basically those benches are built to just clip down in place. They won't move once they're in place, but you can just lift them out. There's no screws or anything to take them out. And so those just lift out, which allows you then to remove the wing wall. The wing wall is 2 bolts. The bolt is attached into the soffit space in the ceiling. You open up a panel, unscrew the bolt, and push the bolt up into the ceiling, and you can walk away with the panel because the bottom of it is attached with the Z-clip as well. So I think that's a similar thing happening on Coulter's Creek, but it's under the deck panel there. And, initially we had submitted this, but then, we were thinking about some of the challenges, and we went back and reworked these details out. And here it is after the removal of anything that's sort of ground attached, you're left with the cladding on the exterior of the building. Which is all, so those 5 big panels are ACX plywood, which is an exterior graded plywood, so that they'll last. And then everything else is a cedar rain screen system, which allows the cedar to breathe and dry out quickly. And that stuff is actually also done in panels, so even that could come off because it's just on French cleats that will attach in a couple spots so that it easily can be put on. And we wanted to make sure that when we put it on, we're putting on panels that are perfectly done for the One World folks. So that's pretty much it for that, I think. I don't think I have anything else on the other one. Let me just go through. Some of the other little details they did of like how the doors work. We're building the doors, so we want to make sure that we build the doors to be sturdy. They have a steel frame, but lightweight. How the paneling works. The paneling was a little bit of a challenge because we can't get 10-foot pieces of cedar at a decent price right now. So luckily using this would-be scrap material or byproduct material allowed us to take and do it out of 5-foot pieces. Taking out those panels. There's the others that allow them to come apart. Here's some of the students working out some of the details and early design ideas and things that Sarah and Brandy said, no, what are you doing? We hate it. That's okay. That's part of the process too. But yeah, the students, I'm really, really proud of them, how they've been working. We did, I think, 15 different color samples of what the cladding would be. We're going to just do a clear, clean cedar siding on the wall, something that doesn't yell too much and doesn't fight, honestly, with the big green roof. You see a sign there. A separate permit will come from that. This is not part of that. So that is not part of this discussion right now. So I don't want you to think that we're trying to sneak a sign past you. I think that's it. Oh, I had a group photo, but it didn't get added. So just imagine lots of sort of scared and sort of excited college students. So with that, I know that was a long presentation, but I figured it's my first time in front of y'all.
Yeah.
Y'all should have some idea what we're up to.
So I appreciate that a
Thank
lot.
you.
It's nice to see what your students are doing and get a feel for that as well, because we are a college town. So we appreciate that a lot.
Thanks.
And also to add, on all of our meetings.
Sarah, you're gonna have to go to the
Gotta go
microphone
back.
since
Come on
we're
up.
recording this.
Yeah, it's totally fine. Here.
When we had the meetings with the student, I dragged Mark Hume, who is a local builder by profession, along to make sure and double check all of the fasteners and double check the design. And it's a really strong, great, awesome project. It's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, we've had our growing pains. Sorry, I'll go in front of the mic. We've had our growing pains as a program, for sure. And, that's led us to kind of figure out what works, what doesn't work. So, for example, just simple things like how you get to choose, how you get to be in the design build program is now, there's a bit of a gateway there where you more people want to be in than can be in. And, you kind of have to compete to get in to, how we handle, budgeting, scheduling, everything, really. And, also some of the resources that the college is dedicating to what we do is changing as well. So it's been nice to have this process go as smoothly as it has with One World and with McDonald Elementary. And we're also working with the golf course. So they're, maybe you're hearing this for the first time. I didn't say that. Never mind. Some golf course. So Yeah,
Great.
thanks.
Gina, do you have a question?
No, well, I have a whole bunch of stuff that's in
Yeah.
my head right now. First of all, I was lucky enough when I was finishing my undergrad at University of Oklahoma to do this kind of a project. And it was for a very small community outside of Oklahoma City. And one of the most important efforts of my entire college career. It teaches you everything from what you need to learn in an architecture class, but it's also community development, it's communication skills, it's responsibility, it's all of that budgeting stuff that nobody wants to love. So I think this is huge, and I'm really excited that we've got something of this magnitude at the U of I. That's very exciting, so thank you for that. This is a fascinating project, and I wish I was in on some of those meetings. I want to know all of those little details about the Z-clips and all of that. That would have been fun to be in the middle of. So I look forward to it. If you ever have a moment where, you know, a nosy city councilor can come along, I'd love to see it. It looks exciting, and I think it's going to be perfect in our newly revitalized downtown area.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you're welcome anytime, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, from 2:30 to, let's say, midnight.
Oh, geez. Okay.
They're in there. So,
Probably won't make the midnight
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
but yeah.
hopefully meet you there.
Maureen, do you have anything?
Well, I just have to say, I think this is really fun. We used, when I directed the clinical program at the law school, we used students on the project of designing our clinic as well as the entrance up to the law school and the foyer. And I was so impressed at the work they did and the quality. And now it's so fun to see it out there being used in the community. And it was such high quality work. I want to applaud the U of I and what a great collaboration it is between the University of Idaho, businesses, building owners, as well as contractors and engineers being served as consultants. I think it brings it all together and it links up the university and town in a wonderful way to make it bigger and better and so modern. And this idea of the doors collapsing and all those kind of things was really fun. It's really fun. So thank you very much. I'm totally in favor of it.
Great. You know, so I'm absolutely yes to all of those things. The collaboration is wonderful. And this might be more for Gary or for Lori, just really quick. Anything stand out that we have to worry about code-wise? It all fits?
No, as far as extension into the public right-of-way, those sorts of things, that's all being handled by staff. Might want Tyler to chime in a little bit. One of the concerns that we had looking at it was it needed to make sure that it wasn't bolted down and it could be removed, because that's the difference of licensing versus needing an encroachment permit for a permanent encroachment in the public right-of-way. Second concern was the view shed down 6th Street, because these panels will be extending. The sidewalk passage for access is all taken care of in the permit process. But we weren't sure if there was going to be any site limitations on 6th Street. So if Tyler could address that, that was staff's main concern.
Great, thanks. Tyler?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Sandra. Yeah, we were, one of the things we really appreciated was that the owners of One World Cafe and Scott consulted with us early. We were able to go out, meet with them, and talk with them through this process. Gary indicated some of our primary concerns and things that we were looking at. We really appreciated them working with us on the connection pieces and making sure that it truly is removable, because at that point, it's not an encroachment. It does meet the essence of the cafe. And as has been indicated, we did a pilot that we ran through the council with Coulter's Creek that had similar provisions. And so while it looks pretty permanent, we really wanted to assure that this truly can be removed. And they've done a lot of work to make that happen in a lot of really creative ways. And so the other thing we looked at was that view shed, and then obviously the ADA compliance. When we have our downtown sidewalks are a little different than the sidewalks we have elsewhere in the city. You know, elsewhere in some of the neighborhoods, the sidewalks are transportation infrastructure. It is for pedestrians to traverse the area. Downtown is a little bit different. It's why we have wider sidewalks downtown, is because downtown is it's a gathering place. It's a place where we want to add vibrancy. But as we look at that, we also have to balance those other needs. And that is where we get the push and pull with our downtown rights of way, is that we have transportation needs, we have ADA accessibility to consider, and then also wanting to help support the vibrancy of our downtown, which the entire community benefits from. And so we looked at all of these things. One of the things that we took a hard look at was some of the sightline issues. And really, we're in pretty good shape. There's a bulb out on 6th Street, so it's already pushed out in a bike lane, and so it's well outside of the sight triangle for the 6th Street intersection, the intersection of 6th and Main. And then the alleyway that comes out in between Main and Jackson Street is actually a one-way alley, and so it's one-way north, and so that eliminates any real concerns with the sight issues there. With that being a one-way alley, we don't have people coming south out of that alley trying to see past. And we were able, as Scott mentioned, to maintain ADA accessibility. We have a pilot where we've got some tree well filler that we've planned on deploying for quite a while downtown in the 6th Street corridor. We plan on installing actually here in the next few weeks with this. It's a rubberized tree well filler that actually makes that surface mountable while still being permeable and allowing moisture down into the tree. And so we think that we'll have good ADA clearance and feel like the sightline issue has been adequately addressed.
Great, thank you. Gina?
And this is probably more for Sarah Beth, so if you want to go back up to the thing. So naturally, we're still kind of in the COVID clutches, and what are your plans? What are your internal processes that you put in place that will address not only the social distancing, but then, that corner right there as you turn from Main to 6th, that's a good spot to loiter. Talk to me a little bit
Right.
about what your plans are there, please.
Right, so on all of our tables, we have little cart for cleaning the surfaces.
Yep,
The
I've seen
clean and
those.
dirty cards. And then all of our seating outside will be 6 feet distance still. And there's plenty of open seating. It will be really nice for the cafe because right now people are congregating inside and starting to open up a little bit. And having this expanded outdoor seating is going to be very, very important to our business, especially now that we're expanding. We want people to come back and start feeling safe in public, but having more space outside that they can in a safe way. It's also really nice because it's, by having these kind of built-in looking bars, it's creating a space that's going to look more like a downtown cafe, like One World. So it's going to be easier for us to police the people standing around loitering, people that haven't purchased anything. It'll be for customers only. So,
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Great. Maureen, do you have anything else?
No, thank you very much.
I do have another one.
Oh, Gina has one more, go ahead.
What's our ETA?
June, yeah.
How many more times can you run
I
back
know,
and
right?
forth is my question.
I'm pretty fat and don't count. I think we got probably about 2 to 3 weeks of on-site construction
Okay.
once we're going. And the way that was the other part of that I wanted to mention. And maybe also to your other question, having these little sort of fold out kind of like booths also helps to segment people on this inside the space because they can't really like congregate too much. It's the small group here, and then there's a wall and a wall there. So one of the things that we'll be doing as we do construction was a lot of it you saw because it's disassemblable, it's also prefabricated. So that helps us to do the construction work on the site while the sidewalk is open, because we're not using a lot of power tools or anything like that. We're primarily using, drills and drivers on site. And that's a big part of it. So I guess you'll be surprised because it won't be there, and then 2 days later it'll be there.
Yeah.
It'll go very, very fast. And that's because we're doing a lot of the stuff off-site and then bringing it over. So if you wonder if it can be disassembled, you just watch how fast it goes together. Okay, go ahead, Maureen. Sorry,
I
I
have
should.
a
Oh,
question.
no, you're
I'm
fine.
a teacher. I'm so used to calling them.
So my other question is that when the pandemic is done, is there any thought that you can actually have it be used without the walls in between it? And so it actually becomes more like tables without having walls like between every.
Well, I'll say this, and I think Sarah might have a couple comments too. I'll say, we tried to make it flexible so that if they do make that decision or don't want to have walls all the time or whatever, they could, it would still function. It would still look nice. We're cladding right up to the joint on the hinge so that it would be nice looking regardless, but I'll let her talk a little bit on that.
Part of the reason why the walls are nice and we're excited about them is because that 6th Street corridor is very windy, and it also has a lot of south-facing sun, and those little partitions give a little bit of shade and wind protection to the people that are sitting in there. So on nice spring days where it's sunny like we're having right now, it would be really nice to be able to have just a tiny little wind barrier out there. So it's in the future, if we needed to take them down, we would, but that's one of the most exciting parts for us, actually.
Great. And it also just gives a lot of privacy to people too.
That's true. And it also visually breaks up that long 6th Street wall that is kind of bland right now. Having a bar and then having the partitions, it makes it seem more interesting.
So my nerdy little question for you is, we still allow dogs outside?
Yeah, dogs will be outside, just not inside.
I just had to check. Anything else?
I'm sold.
Maureen, you good?
So
All right, well, I think this looks great. Really excited. Gary, are we able to put this on consent, or do we need to?
Consent agenda is fine.
Perfect. Are you good with that, Maureen, Gina?
yes,
I have an evil side that wants those kids to come talk, but no.
No.
Consent is fine.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. That was great. We're excited to see it happen. Okay, I believe the Lee Newbill Safety Fair donation request. Gary Reedner will present on this, or at least introduce it.
Thank you. And my introduction won't take very long. I'll invite Roger Lanier up. As the council committee staff report pointed out, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. The Lee Newbill Safety Fair was not held in 2020, and that was because of the COVID. And the Safety Fair organizers decided that they wanted to have it come back in some form. As pointed out in the staff report, one of the major things that the Safety Fair does, certainly not its only function, is to have a bicycle rodeo type atmosphere and distribute bicycle helmets to the community's youth. That did not occur last year, so kids are growing, they're growing out of their helmets, we have new riders, that sort of thing. So typically those helmets are purchased with grants, with donations. The Volunteer Ambulance Company of the Moscow Volunteer Fire Department has done so in the past. This year they're a little short, and they are here to ask the council if the council is willing to fund $2,000 of purchase of bicycle helmets in their modified distribution, where the Lee Newbill Safety Fair folks will be working with the Moscow School District to distribute those helmets. So we're asking is that if the council sees fit, you have $20,000 in your non-prioritized projects line item, which, as you know, is utilized for those projects which our council deems worthy during the year, but were not appropriated or presented in the budget. So, very simple ask, and as you can see, there are other organizations who are donating as well. So if Roger would like to come up and amplify that a little bit, that is the sum of the request today.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reedner. Hello, folks. So, just real briefly, because Gary pretty much covered everything, The Lee Newbill Safety Fair, first of all, it's named after a fallen Moscow police officer, Lee Newbill, and we are very involved at the police department. We're very proud of that moniker and the tradition that the Safety Fair has of providing helmets to young children. For the past several years, we've provided between 500 and 600 helmets to children that come to the Lee Newbill Safety Fair. And as Gary also pointed out, there are a lot of other aspects to the Safety Fair. Part of it is a bicycle safety skills course that's put on with Safe Routes to School. So when COVID hit, we weren't able to provide any helmets, and there was also shutdowns with a lot of the city, and the school district could not do some of the normal bike rodeos that they do in partnership with Safe Routes to School. So in about January, the Safety Fair Committee, of which I am part of and represent the police department in the city, got together and tried to decide if we were going to be able to outguess the COVID pandemic. We decided that that was probably too risky. So we started looking at what is the central portion of the Safety Fair that we wanted to try to continue, and we quickly zeroed in on the bicycle helmet distribution. We try to target the young folks. The Safety Fair is always the first Saturday in June. We try to target them before the summer riding season hits, make sure that they have a custom fit helmet. We looked at a lot of different ideas, and the school district stepped up and offered, as well as the Safe Routes to School, stepped up and offered to kind of make multiple small events at the schools as opposed to the one large safety fair. And this is a proven model that the Safe Routes to School has used. They usually try to couple it with Bicycle Safety Month, and they essentially do the same thing on a much smaller scale. So the next hurdle was to come up with the money for 500 to 600 helmets, and probably more like 700, because during the safety fair, we cater to the kids that show up. When we start going to each school, all of the kids will want to participate. So we are anticipating somewhere in the area of 700 helmets to be distributed. So the Safe Routes to School has their money from last year, and then also their allocated money from this year, which amounts to about $1,000. The Safety Fair Committee was able to obtain a grant, so we have about $2,000 that we're willing to allocate to that. And then we're asking the city to allocate $2,000, which would give us $5,000. And we think that will cover the need, make sure that none of the children are left out. We already have 3 events scheduled, and the Safe Routes to School coordinator, Aaron Bacon, is working on coordinating the rest. And so we're just trying to have this all come together on a fairly rapid basis before school is out for the summer. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Do you have any questions?
Is 2,000 enough?
Well, we'll have a total of $5,000 with all the partners contributing it. And yes, we've already gotten some bids from a couple vendors that we use, and we're really trying hard, even though we're going to have a lot of events and process a lot of kids. We're trying to really simplify things. So
Sure.
Instead of going with the helmets of multiple sizes and moving the pads out, we're going to a little different style helmet that just has the wire adjustment, the little dial adjustment, so that we're really trying to minimize the exposure of the kids in close proximity with the volunteers that will be fitting. And the volunteers will primarily be folks that normally work with Safe Routes to School, and then are some of our bicycle officers. So we want it to be custom, but we want it to be quick.
Great.
Sure.
So yeah, we think $5,000 should suit our needs.
Okay.
Good. Maureen?
No, I have the same question Gina did, is how do you get enough helmets for all those kids? But it seems like you have it under control, and I'm in favor of it.
I just want to say that I absolutely love this program. I've worked with a lot of kids, and there have been some that never would have had a helmet if not for this, and it's so important they have it. So I'm very much in favor of this. I love seeing the kids with their helmets on. I always ask them where their helmets are if they're not wearing one.
Right.
And so I'm really, I'm super happy to be able to support something like this. So are we good with that, Maureen, also?
Absolutely.
Great. Consent? Or do we need to?
This is probably something you want to get some exposure
Sure.
for the program itself.
bet.
So
Great.
regular agenda would be
Perfect.
Recommended.
You don't mind visiting us with again about this?
That would be perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and next we have Mike Ray up with the ordinance amending Title IV, Chapter 6 of Moscow City Code regarding amendments to the outdoor lighting code for public art.
Actually, we've got stormwater.
Did I miss
user
one?
fees now.
I just got so excited to talk to Mike. I'll come back to you in a minute, Mike, sorry. All right, stormwater user fee credits and waivers. No offense, Kyle, I'm also super excited to hear from Kyle.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, well, good afternoon, counselors. Just a little bit of background for those that may be watching. The city of Moscow received a phase 2 stormwater permit from the Environmental Protection Agency back in 2019. It became effective October 1st, 2019. And the permit requires the city to develop a comprehensive stormwater management program over the life of the permit term. Just to and from the city's stormwater control system are largely untreated. And so it's incumbent upon the city and very imperative that we take proactive measurements moving forward to not only protect the environment, but also our local water resources. Earlier this year, the City Council adopted Title V, Chapter 19, which is titled Stormwater User Fees. And the code provides for the establishment of a system of user fees that will help to fund the necessary programs and activities that we must implement to comply with the federal permit. It also directs the city to adopt a written system of user fee credits and exemptions where applicable to better individualize fees to reflect a customer's burden and level of services received. So before you today and in your council packet is a summary of the credits and waivers that staff is proposing that the council adopt as we move toward the assessment of user fees in the next fiscal year to start funding the utility. Credits and waivers are very common. They're used by municipalities and other entities nationally. And they're a great way to incentivize and reward activities and management practices that reduce the cost to provide services and also recognize those customers that lessen their burden on our stormwater control system. So getting into the credit summaries, you should have a document in your CCSR titled Summary of City of Moscow Stormwater User Fee Credits. And on the top of that lists the type of credit or waiver, the reason for the credit or waiver, the amount, and the eligibility criteria. And so I'll go over those. So with credits, we're looking at up to 50% of a credit to apply to qualifying non-pacted gravel areas. And I think we understand nationally that customers that have uncompacted gravel areas reduce the overall amount of stormwater that's conveyed off-site. For K through 12 educational activities, we're looking at up to a 20% credit applied to the participating education institutions, with the understanding that their efforts will help to offset some of the city's costs of providing those types of services. If you recall, a couple presentations ago that we gave, we were required to start implementing our public education criterion that's in our permit last October. And so we have a number of targeted audiences that we'll have to reach out to over the life of the permit, and K through 12 is just one of those targeted audiences. I think we also talked a little bit about the direct dischargers. Those have already, where we had the relevant information, we've already applied those. Those are customers in the city that discharge directly to either intermittent water bodies like Hog Creek, or perennial water bodies like certain portions of Paradise Creek or the South Fork Palouse River. I think I didn't skip over. Okay, and we're looking at for MPDS, IPDS permit holders up to a 20% credit for qualifying certain types of activities, with the assumption that if they're complying with the conditions of their permits, which could be maybe not necessarily just like the U of I's municipal storm permit, but also certain industrial sectors that may become permitted under the federal or state regulations. We would work with those entities and look at whether or not a credit will be available. On-site retention and treatment, we're looking at a credit from anywhere from 20% all the way up to 100% waiver, depending on the retention system that they put into place. And so the bottom threshold would be the 20% credit for the 95th percentile 24-hour storm event. And that's an explicit requirement in our permit right now. And so construction activities that disturb greater than an acre, and this isn't a requirement by our code yet, but it will be within the next couple of years. But any of those activities that disturb greater than an acre will be required to retain or try to meet this retention standard. This is something that we're working on with our contractor, Aspect Consulting out of Yakima, to look at the technical feasibility of the retention standard requirement in our permit. We are not sure if that retention standard is actually technically feasible because of the clay soils that we have here. And so this is something that we may want to address as that technical feasibility assessment gets wrapped up. But for right now, this is kind of the staff's proposal to look at on-site retention. And then regarding waivers, these are pretty self-explanatory, but I thought I'd go over them real quickly. And if you have any questions, we can talk about them a little further. So non-use. So if a developed real property naturally does not use our stormwater control system, that would be waived, as well as vacant undeveloped properties. Public roads. This is a very common type of a waiver. We understand that roads are part of what we're calling our stormwater control system. So the curb and gutter that convey a lot of the runoff from properties. So we're looking at waiving roads, publicly owned buildings and facilities as well. The city as a utility provider currently does not charge public facilities for other water and sewer utility services. And so for consistency with established city policy, it would be the recommendation to waive city-owned building facilities, and as well as public parks, open spaces, trails, and paths. So with that, I kind of went through it quickly, but I'd be happy to try to address any questions you might have.
Thank you, Kyle. Questions? Gina, Maureen?
I guess I do have.
Sure.
But I'm afraid, Kyle, that this might be one of those no duh moments, but this is not something that a resident can necessarily do at their home, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, this would apply to all parcels excluding residential.
Okay, thank you.
Maureen,
No
do you have any questions?
Nothing.
Okay. Nope, nor do I. That's that's a lot of information. It took me a while to read through it all earlier, but I appreciate it, Kyle. You did a great job. I don't have anything that you didn't address here, so recommendations?
I think it needs to be regular,
Yep.
but we approve it.
Okay.
Just real quickly, this is something that we plan to, as we start to look at the budget for stormwater and start to look at the assessment of user fees, this is something that we've been talking initially to customers about, but with the caveat that it hasn't been, approved by the council yet. But this is something that we'll get out to the public and talk to customers about and see if it's applicable to their property.
I do
Gina
have,
has another question. Go ahead.
Kyle, if when you bring this back to us at next Monday's meeting, is there a way to give us some kind of an idea of the scale of what these fees are going to look like? I mean, I have no idea what the impact to, like the Palouse Mall or Anatech Labs. I mean, what is that? I don't have any idea about the magnitude of the fees.
Um,
And I don't know that maybe that's secret information, but if you can just give me a range, that would be helpful.
If you don't mind, this is Tyler. I might be able to be a little helpful there. So we are refining and plan to come forward to the council with a finalized rate in the proposal. And so we have sent out to all of the more impacted customers. So what we established, you may recall from previous presentations that we established what was the average impervious surface for a property in Moscow. And that was used to establish an equivalent service unit, which is called an ESU, which again is very common practice for storm utilities. And so everybody that had the equivalent of 5 ESUs or more was sent a personal letter, and then we have followed up with personal contact. And that letter gave a projected amount that we were looking at for the storm utility. And so then we contacted them so that we could talk them through the process and work through that. And so that outreach has happened to each individual account holder that would have 5 or more ESUs. And then we plan, as Kyle mentioned, a lot further outreach, but we will be coming back to the city council for you to approve a finalized rate based on the total number of ESUs that we've now got calculated. So that will be coming back in, and included with that would be any information you might want to have about impacts on properties.
Well, do you have some idea of what the timeline of that looks like in terms of the educational part, coming back to us, starting to charge the utility fee?
Yes, we're actually really close on all of this, Maureen. So we've got, so the education part has happened and has been happening pretty robustly over the course of the last year. We will be coming back to the council here in the next 2 months with finalized fees. Our plan is to have everything, including the finalized utility billing database, ready to go and over to finance no later than July, so that they have time to incorporate that database and make sure we're ready for a smooth launch in October.
Gary, you were about to say something?
Yeah, my only comment was to estimate what savings will be other than a percentage, risks giving people false information because the fees have not yet been approved.
Right, okay, great.
Oh, all right.
Okay, so put this on the council agenda, and we recommend their adoption. True?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now carefully looking at my agenda.
Thank you.
Now we are going to go to Mike Ray and the ordinance amending Title IX, Chapter 6 of the Moscow City Code. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, counselors. Good afternoon. So before you today, we have a code amendment that the Planning and Zoning Commission has been working on for the last few months. It ended up originating from the Arts Department as a request that they take a look at it. So it's an amendment of Title IV, Chapter 6, regarding amendment to outdoor lighting for public art. So as you may recall, the Homecoming is our most recent public art installation. That's at the North Couplet, C and Main Street. And it was designed, fabricated, and installed by artists Jennifer Corio and Dave Fry, Vancouver, Washington. And as part of the scope of work that was submitted to the Arts Department, included the creation of a lighting proposal for the site. And they recommended 3 fixtures, kind of well-type fixtures that are recessed into the ground. Each of those is focused on the curved panels that were mounted above. And this is a picture of the Homecoming art project. You can see the 3 panels that represent the hills there that were supposed to be illuminated. And then this is the lighting proposal that was submitted by the artist, showing those well lights shining up at the panels. Another view of an elevation shot of the same thing. So internally, city staff has been discussing the lighting of public art. Currently, the majority of lighting within the city codes required to be full cutoff, with uplighting only permitted in certain circumstances. So we have partially a dark sky ordinance, but not a true dark sky ordinance. The Arts Department ended up requesting that the Commission review the lighting ordinance to see if there's an opportunity to provide an exemption for full cutoff for the public art. They cited a few other freestanding public art installations that would benefit from such lighting. So one is the water spout at Fire Station 3 on the north end of town. We also have Helioterra, the rammed earth project, which is at the south couplet, the Wren Welcome Garden. Would also benefit from some uplighting. So taking a look at our current code for full cutoff lighting, it's really intended to be designed, installed, maintained in order to prevent light trespass on adjacent properties or the public street. In residential zoning districts, we do have some exceptions to the full cutoff requirement. There are just simple fixtures that don't exceed a certain lumen level, so 400 lumens. Doesn't need to be shielded at all, just partially. 2,000 lumen wall-mounted fixtures, so if they're below an eave, there's an exception for that. And then angle flood lighting at a 25-degree angle. And then partially sealed as long as it's on a timer. We exempt that as well. And then motion sensors. So luminaires that are on motion sensors are exempt from the full cutoff requirement. And then taking a look at non-residential zoning districts required to be full cutoff. We do have some exceptions there. So our sign code allows uplighting, so it can be internally or externally lit. Often in residential areas, you'll have externally lit signage, and that's usually needs to be shielded. So the source of illumination is required to be shielded. So you have any ground level illumination, you're not going to present safety hazards to maybe oncoming traffic. And then we exempt flagpole uplighting. So we require a certain setback, 20 feet from the property line, and then there's a maximum lumen threshold there, 13,000 for non-residential zones and 8,000 for residential zones. And then lighting of communication towers, so obviously there's some FCC regulations that require these towers to be lit. We exempt that. And we also exempt the central business zoning district downtown, so lighting of public spaces. And then U of I campus and in the historic districts there, as long as it's partially shielded, does not trespass onto residential properties. So the commission ended up taking a field trip to the Wren Welcome Garden to look at the Helioterra art project. And that was a special meeting, occurred January 11th of this year. There were 3 different fixtures that they ended up viewing as part of that. They ended up directing staff to prepare an ordinance amending the lighting code to allow uplighting for public art. And that was modeled off of a little bit of a hybrid between the flagpole regulations and the sign code regulations, with the source of illumination being shielded. And so this was the commission out there at dark at the Wren Welcome Garden. This is the Helioterra project. And Scott Gropp on the commission was kind enough to provide a few different fixtures to view. There was one of 6,500 lumens, one of 3,500 lumens, and then a smaller scale one of 200 lumens. And you can see the commission out there. And part of the issue here is that there's obviously some brush and some shrubs in front of this installation that are being lit. That's why you see that really bright light there, the image on the left. But really gave them an idea of what those, highlights of these pieces at dark are really going to be such a benefit, seeing as though the winter time we're dark at 4:30, a lot of the time. So from that, they ended up looking at inserting under the exemptions for lighting, public art lighting, so lighting used for the illumination of government-owned freestanding public art displays, so long as the source of illumination is not visible from any adjoining street or property, and the maximum lumen output does not exceed 13,000 lumens in non-residential zoning districts and 8,000 lumens in residential zoning districts. So kind of doing the hybrid of the sign regulations as well as the flagpole uplighting. They looked at fixtures that were less than the maximum that are detailed on here. But after a lengthy discussion, they wanted to provide as much flexibility just given the nature of the size, scale, height, reflection of a lot of the public art projects. They really wanted to give the arts department and the artist a lot of flexibility to decide the right fixture for the particular piece of art. And so that's how they ended up arriving at that regulation. So with that, staff would recommending forwarding the proposed ordinance for public hearing at the council's upcoming meeting, April 19th, which is next Monday. And I'd certainly be able to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mike. Questions for Mike?
I don't have any questions. I went through the digital display sign phase of our lives, and I realized how deliberate that process is. So this actually gave me flashbacks, actually. So I think it's deliberate, well thought out. I think we ought to forward it.
Maureen?
I agree. And being on P&Z when they went to approve this, it was so fun to actually have them go out to the site and try different kinds of lighting and walk around in the dark and make it all work. So I really agree that the due diligence has clearly been met.
Yeah, and I went through about, 3 months of that process while I was on the committee before y'all went on your field trip. So it's nice to see, how it progressed and really the deliberate work that went into it. I never knew what a lumen was until planning and zoning, so thank you all very much for that. I appreciate it. And, I recommend also.
Perfect.
Okay.
So we'll go to
Consent.
Public hearing.
Oh, that's right.
Has to be
That's right, yep.
regular, yeah.
Wonderful, thank you.
Right on.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, sir.
Staff reports?
Staff has nothing at this time here.
Very good. It's my recommendation that we adjourn.
Here, here.
Okay,
Great, good to see you, Maureen.
bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.